Continuing our series on what it means to walk in indestructible joy, the kind of life joy that does not have any bearing on our external circumstances, the macarious life as we talk about in this series. Joe and Travis are back on the show to look at it from a business perspective, from a life perspective, from a family perspective. What does Jesus mean in these clues of life and leadership that's worthy to be followed? I can't wait for you to listen in. I'm Dr. Nate Salah. This is a call to leadership. Travis, Joe, hello, friends.
How are you?
Welcome back.
Hello.
We've been on this journey together as we uncover the possibility for living in a state of unshakable, unbreakable joy. And as leaders, when issues happen and we have challenges arise, and they're going to happen, whether in business, whether in family, whether in life, the worthiness of our leadership will hinge on how we approach all of the situations and challenges we face. So it's one thing that Jesus taught is, look, I want to make you worthy to lead. And this is our baseline. We've talked a lot about being holy, being set apart for a divine purpose, a calling that's beyond ourselves, walking in godly integrity, and really consecrating ourselves for that set apart life. And now we're going through each of these steps, if you will, right? Step one, blessed are the poor in spirit. In other words, hey, God, I'm going to depend on you. I'm laying my life in your hands. Step one. Step two, blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those, in other words, who say, God, I need to lay my worries upon you and what truly pains me, and at the same time have empathy and compassion for those around me, whether it's in my work environment or it's in my home environment and my community. And today is especially fun because we're going to uncover the third clue that I think stifles so many because it's so incredibly misunderstood. And at the end of it, I believe that our listener as well as us will have a newfound appreciation for this third instruction, this third beatitude, this third idea of what it means to walk in a life joy that's not dependent on external circumstances, to stand firm in that strength, is blessed are the meek. You know, the meek, it's an interesting term. Have you ever gone into a business meeting, a new launch, something where you're ready to take on competitive advantage, and you say, team, today I'm going to unload something on you that's going to fire us up. You ready? We're going to be meek. What happens in that room?
I mean, if you don't put some context.
No context.
Yeah, no, I mean, then it's you've lost the room.
That's one of your opening speeches.
You've lost the room. It's one of my best ones.
Meek.
Right. Be meek. Right.
You think about any leader. Think about the presidential elections.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
think about our
the
current
archetype
president.
of meekness.
Right. So let's talk it through. Why is the initial response like, are you serious?
It's just the vocabulary, and I'm sure you're going to enlighten us on the Greek word that was actually used that will position this in a different light for us.
Yeah,
we're getting smarter.
Right.
We know what's coming.
I've heard this story before. Right.
True story, right? Because meekness is often associated with weakness, right? I mean, they go hand in hand, and I grew up with that. I grew up with that. Well, Meek, like, that's not like a power move. That's not like strength of leadership. Who's going to ever say, oh yeah, I'm following you into the octagon, right? Or on the battleship or wherever it is. So, why would Jesus say this? Well, people would say then, well, Jesus he wants you to surrender to the situation and okay, but that's not what this is saying at all.
It's the exact opposite.
No.
Yeah. I mean, everybody says Jesus was a pacifist, right? But like, this is not a pacifist word at all.
No.
This is John Wayne.
Yes, 100%.
You know what I mean?
So here's what he says. He says, blessed are the meek. Meekness, it's been said, it's not weakness, it's power under control. And in this case would be power under God's control. And so what Jesus is saying, and the Greek, thanks for that tee up, Mr. Joe, is the word here used here is praeus, which it represents a strong horse. Imagine a stallion who, as you know, have you ever been around the equestrian world? Horses are extremely strong. Even the ones who aren't very strong are strong. I mean, you get kicked by a horse, you're in trouble, right? You may be going to the hospital or worse, right? Yeah. And so, but at the same time, they can be gentle animals. And what this word picture is, it's willingly bridled. It's saying, hey, look, I could destroy you, but I'm not. We're going to work together. And I like the way, another way that it was put by Dr. Jordan Peterson. He describes it as swords sheathed. Now, you've done some sword work, Joe, back in your day, right? Explain to the listener or the viewer what that means to have a sheathed sword.
Well, if your sword is in your sheath.
Well, what's a sheath? Some people don't even know what that is.
Oh, it's like the scabbard that you put your sword in.
Like a casing. Yeah, it keeps you from cutting yourself.
Yeah, I did kendo, which we did some sword training in there, and you even in some martial arts, when you bow and you put your fist in your hand, that's shielding your weapon. Mm. So, yeah, there's when you take your sword out and you lay it in front of somebody, you always keep it sheathed. You don't point a blade at them. That's aggressive. So, you keep it sheathed. It's a sign of respect and also a sign of there's a powerful instrument in here.
That's fascinating. Mm-hmm. Isn't it fascinating? Mm-hmm. Well, when you break it down like that, okay, because that's how Jesus's original listeners would have understood that in the context, because there was a lot of swords out there, especially the Romans, right? And even his own followers, because many of them thought, hey, we're going to overthrow those Romans, right?
Yeah.
And so that connotation, how does that then speak to you? How does that reframe this concept?
I mean, when you think of it in the context of Jesus and all that he accomplished, I mean, 2,000 years later, we're still talking about his words, talking about his teachings, and he used this controlled power as a way of bringing people to him, because there was strength in him. People could tell there was strength in him. But he did it in a way that was more, that was less warrior-like, and it was more fatherly, shepherding leadership. Like, the shepherd carries a staff, right? So you can either hook your lambs and bring them to you, or you can fight off a wolf, right? And that's kind of who he was. He was that strength controlled. Like, you knew if he had to handle himself, he could, but he didn't have to, because the way he lived his life. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's choosing faith over control, right? So, and if it kind of, you go with the other two Beatitudes that we've gone through, and this one is, right, you have the power to do a lot of things, right? But you're choosing not to use that power because you're having faith in God that He's going to deliver for you. But you have that power, but because you're disciplined and you're faithful, you don't have to exercise that power.
And it speaks in all areas of life. And when you even talk about, okay, from the business perspective, because there are many situations in your business day and my business day that are unexpected, challenging situations. And even going through these we've been talking about in our community, our G3 community, as we go through these Beatitudes, this checklist, if you will, this systematic checklist of, okay, how should I respond to these situations? And so like even these three, and we'll go through, of course, all of them, but even these three, if you're facing a high challenge situation in business, and okay, let's just talk about these 3 steps. Step 1, God, it's your business. I'm a steward. I'm a shepherd. The situation is happening. I surrender my own understanding to you. Help me to better understand how to deal with this situation, right? That's step 1, right? That's blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Step 2, blessed are those who mourn. If there's a client or someone or a team member who is in this angst or in this challenge, maybe I should have a little empathy and compassion before I move into judging the situation. Step in with, hey, I'm so sorry that this situation is happening and that you're experiencing it, right? Step 3, don't just come in blazing my weapon. Power under control.
This one speaks to a lot of, your emotional intelligence, the EQ, like as a leader, right? To be able to pause, right? Like to pause, let the emotion wash over you before you make the decision, right? And think more of how does this align with the long-term vision of the company, right? What's this decision that I need to make that's going to align long-term, not short-term? And I think that can be countercultural to a business, because a lot of times in business, people are focused on being bold, being assertive, right? Really stepping into the limelight, wanting that limelight on yourself. And this is the exact opposite of that. It's more long-term vision, emotional intelligence, not really wanting the spotlight on yourself, but more of a servant leadership type of mentality, right? Like how is this decision is going to affect my team, my vision for my company, my customers. You're taking all of these different things into perspective before you make that reaction.
And that pause is a game changer.
It's huge.
This blessed are the meek in that pause. And I want to hear what you have to say about this, Joe, because you're a pausing guy. We know you're a thinker. And that's a compliment. And it
sounded like a compliment.
I feel like
until he said, this is a compliment.
Because sometimes people think, delayed reaction means ineffectiveness or indecision, right? And so that's not the case here at all. It's saying, hey, you know what? It's quite possible I'm going to make a brash decision. I don't know about you two, but in the last 50 plus years of my life, I've made a ton of really boneheaded decisions because I did not pause. Mm-hmm. I did not walk in the meekness of saying, you know what? Yeah, you got power. Control it, bro.
Well, I especially think young leaders, and this I think would be very beneficial for young leaders to really learn, right? Because when I think back on my career, I was the most brash when I was young because I felt the pressure to need to react and have a answer right away, right? Because if not, then you don't know what's going on, right? And so I think I made a lot of mistakes in my leadership journey early on because I didn't pause. The older I've gotten, the more I realize that whether you have an answer in 30 seconds or 30 minutes, right, there is no, right, 2 weeks from now, nobody's going to know, right, how quick that was delivered. They're going to understand, was it effective, right? And the effectiveness is more important than the speed of that decision.
And sometimes you need time to prepare. I've and this is important too in this meekness piece. is I've anticipated, even just recently, some feedback on a project that was being worked on. And I knew part of that feedback would be not favorable, right? Just the project worked, but there were some aspects of it that didn't. Preparing for that, because I know that sometimes I will tend to, hey, I'm just going to deal with it right now. I'm going to go through this list. I'm going to knock it all out and get it out of the way. Don't. When you get that message about the project, don't do anything. So you can respond and say, I received it. I'm going to definitely, make sure I review this and acknowledge it. But don't do anything, because yes, you have power, but you need to keep that sword sheathed until the appropriate time.
So a lot of times I have someone will just call me out of the blue and ask me a question, about their business or whatever, because I'm working with them, and they do want that answer like right now. But any decision you make is a stone in a pond, right? Makes a ripple effect. And I think the best business people, especially consultant types, read all of the ripples. Like, where is this going to take us a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, etc. So I always take time to contemplate those kind of questions, because I know on the spot, like especially if you're putting out a fire, you're not thinking about the long-term effect of what you're going to make a decision on. You're just trying to get this under control and taken care of. And it does take some discipline. And I think meekness speaks a lot to discipline, because it does take discipline to say, hey, stop, let me think about it, and I'm going to give you a call back. And then, you have to analyze what the problem is, because oftentimes what solves a problem today creates a bunch of trouble for you down the line. And sometimes it's better just to lose the money right now, right? Instead of making a decision that costs you even more in the future. Or, maybe you lose a little reputation right now, but you don't make a too harsh of a move and you kind of ruin your reputation forever. So it's a balancing act, of course, but I think discipline is the key. If anyone wants my knee-jerk reaction from something, like, I will never give it. I will never just blurt out what I think the answer is. It's just not part of who I am or how I think about it. I never, ever associated it with meekness until we started talking about it. I would have said, if anything, people probably think, oh, well, why is he it's pretty rash of him to shut us down right now. We got a problem here. I wouldn't have thought of it as meekness. I would have thought of it more as being disciplined in my answers. And it's, this is all part of that. When Jesus started telling people about this, it was complete opposite to everything they knew, right? And they're all kind of sitting around listening to it, and their minds are blown, because it's and I hope, like, either through these podcasts or our own leaderships, that we're making some kind of impact on business, that it doesn't have to be the status quo that it's been, that we can exercise these kind of rules and these ways of thinking and maybe change it for future generations, that, you're not screaming at each other in a conference room anymore.
Well, and like Jesus' leadership, I'm glad you brought that up, we're also going to be questioned when we start using these constructs. If you think about it, even then, because even then early in the ministry, people were saying this might be the Messiah, right? This guy is doing, he's performing miracles, the things he's saying and how he's gathering others. And they viewed the Messiah, that we call the Greek for that is Christos, anointed one, as a liberator. So you can think of it like, okay, well, they're in oppression right now by a liberator called Rome. And he comes out, and this is his big manifesto, right? And he says, blessed are the meek. And it's like, well, that doesn't sound like liberation. Mm-hmm. That doesn't sound like we're going to throw off our oppressors. And in our world today, you come into a business environment, and that's your tone and your tempo, again, same thing. People are going to be thrown off, but I can tell you this, they may be thrown off, but once they understand that there's something so much more vibrant to the journey when you're not just following the status quo, but you're walking in that godly consecration of real purpose, real joy, real meaning, you become unstoppable. Hey friend, it's your friend, Dr. Nate Salah. If you've ever wondered how your leadership style reflects Jesus, or how it could, I've got something just for you. It's called the Incarnational Instrument, and it's a powerful self-assessment we created to help you discover your biblical identity, your leadership profile through the lens of Christ. It's practical, it's insightful, and it's completely free for our podcast community. Just head to biblicalidentity.com to take yours today. That's biblicalidentity.com, and find out how you lead and how you can lead holy.
It's hard to understand the power of peace, like being peaceful. Like a peaceful person doesn't seem like a powerful person. But we actually have someone that was on earth and proved us wrong. So when we think in those ways, those are just old constructs. Like that's just a way of thinking that we don't have to bring into our business or our family, and even our mental health. We don't have to find an aggressive way to handle things.
We don't. Yeah. And here's the other part about that. You're talking about the ripples. It's the long game. See, Jesus is not focused on the short game only. Now there's a short game, but he's focused on the infinite game. And part of that infinite game is what he says right here: blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. In other words, hey, you know what? If we don't go in slashing and just making these judgments and decisions that are off the cuff and at the hip all the time, most entrepreneurial life is ready, fire, aim, right? Mm-hmm. He says, there's a reward for that. You got this in the long run. You got more than you could ever hope for. We start here. It's a complete 180 on how we generally approach problem solving. Yeah. So if we're taken to the next step, someone listening is like, okay, well, all right, sounds great. I'm in. Yeah. How do I do it? Because you don't know my situation. Truth is, we don't know individual situations, but we've been through many of them, and sometimes without meekness and sometimes with meekness. As you said earlier, Joe, having discipline is a factor, right? It's a factor in that. However, it's not the only factor, and we need to talk through what it means to walk in meekness when we are being tested, when we are, when we're being powerful yet gentle, influential yet unassuming.
Yeah, I've stumbled there quite a bit, because sometimes, and I think it's just, there's probably some human nature to, you can push someone so far until they kind of unleash. And I think, along my career, there's been times where I've executed my authority or power to get something done. And it definitely wasn't in a meek, peaceful, power under controlled way. It was very in your face, kind of aggressive, like this is how it has to be, So yeah, I mean, even taking this concept into a boardroom is so
foreign.
Yeah, it's just I can't even get a good word for it. It's so no one's doing this. No one's practicing this as a practice. It may happen. There's times where it happens, but the intentionality of everyone in the room practicing this and having what a great discussion it would be, right? Like without the politicking and
you're a stallion. Let's bridle you.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Well,
thanks.
I don't think he's saying not to be assertive, right? I think it comes back to, picking and choosing when to be assertive, but not letting your ego really drive that, right? It's a wisdom. It's being assertive in the right position. It's usually it's the how, right? It's letting, so if somebody, if you talk about walking into a boardroom, and I've walked into a lot of boardrooms and it's been very contentious, and everybody who wants to speak first, they all, everybody wants to shoot their shot, right? And just get it out. And I think in this scenario, it's the person who speaks last, right? It lets everybody get all the emotional, yelling and screaming and get that out. And then when there's that pause, that's when you assert yourself, because you've got some wisdom, right? You're thinking, you can utilize what other people have said, understanding their viewpoints, but you still know what needs to happen. And it's not about, again, I think the meekness is, it's not about you. It's not about your ego. It's not about your limelight. It's about the decision that's being made, being the best decision for those, the roadmap, right? The long-term vision of the company, the customers, the employees. And I think that if you always are looking at it through that lens, how does this affect my vision? How does this affect my customers? How does this affect my employees? You're making the right decision based on those things, right? You're not making it based on, how does this make me look good? How does this make me, the man? I think that's where meekness comes into play in this situation. And I think if you look at servant leadership, which we've talked about a lot, this is kind of the cornerstone of servant leadership, right? That you're putting your employees, you're putting your customers, you're putting their needs ahead of your own personal needs, because that's going to drive your business forward in a profitable manner.
It's good. It's good. And it illustrates the possibility for this, that not only does it sound good on paper, it actually is executable. And not only from the perspective of, it's a good thing to do, it's good for the bottom line. It's good. There's people think, servant leadership. That's another thing about servant leadership. People think it's, again, weakness in leadership. Oh, what do you mean I've got to serve? People are going to walk all over me. They're going to take advantage of me as a leader. No, they're going to recognize that you don't need to posture. They're going to recognize that you don't need to pose. They're going to recognize that you don't have threats around you that are encumbering your decision making. They're going to recognize that you stand firm in supporting and serving the needs of all your stakeholders, and the mission matters more than any one individual, including yourself.
And the thing about servant leadership is that there's a lot of accountability in servant leadership.
100.
Right? Like if you work in an organization that is really built upon servant leadership, you are held accountable much more often, because it is the good of the greater, not the good of the one. And if you do something that is good for you but not good for anybody else, and there's also not only held accountable by your leader, but you're held accountable by your peers, right? There's the group think that starts to happen. It's like, no, that is not how this organization works. We do not focus on that. So I think there's actually more accountability. And again, I don't want people to get lost in this meekness and thinking, oh, well, I never assert myself. No, you assert yourself when needed, when it's affecting the pillars of the organization. You assert yourself and you bring them back in alignment with that vision and customers and colleagues, right? And that's where you have to draw the line. You just don't focus on my ego or my power. That's what you're giving up.
It's controlled power, right? It's not the absence of power. It's the application of power under God's control. That's the game changer, because and I'm glad you made that distinction. Because people say, oh, well, that just means I've got to walk around gentle and everything and quiet and passive. No. Was Jesus like that? Definitely not. No. He called everything out.
Yeah.
And so, but he did it in a way that he didn't have to exert it from the perspective of, oh, this is about me. And that's what you're talking about.
In all reality, Jesus could have snapped his fingers and destroyed the whole earth. You know what I mean? Like he could have forced his will onto anybody with a snap of his fingers, right? He was God. So he could have done that. He chose not to, right? He chose to speak to people and give them parables and teach them lessons and help them uncover it themselves rather than force it upon them.
Even with Pilate. I mean, think about it. He's standing in front of Pilate, and Pilate's like, I have the power. He says, I have the power to take your life. And what is Jesus' response? You only have the power given to you by God, right? Bro, I mean, here's what he could have said. Bro, do you know how many tens of thousands of people have been following me that all I have to do is say, hey, we're just going to sack Jerusalem?
Yeah.
That they would just give their lives to watch you and all your soldiers just dissipate? It could happen today.
Yeah.
Jesus pulls the, you know who I am?
Right. Do you know who my dad
You know
is?
who my dad is?
He could have. I think about that from a military, strategic, zealous perspective. After 3 years, he had the support. Like all the zealots were like, hey, just let us know when. Just say when. It's time.
Yeah.
It's time. That's what he's talking about. It's like, you know what? You know when the time is? It's when it's God's time. And that's when God's power will be exerted. And guess what? It's not about a city. It's not about real estate. You know, the only real estate that really matters is your heart. That's the real estate that matters most. And that's the real estate Jesus is teaching us to fight for and to have our swords sheathed so that we can protect the hearts of those we're called to lead to walk worthily. That is the possibility for inheriting the earth for Jesus. And that's the only road that he's saying to go on. Now, that's business. Family. All right. So you're not in a boardroom. You're at home. How does meekness look like when we are with our families? Patience, calmness, firm but gentle guidance.
I think how Joe said, like you're when you think of like a traditional father figure, right? Not going to raise your voice. You don't need to, right? Because when dad says it's time to go, everybody knows it's time to go, right? And so, you know, I've got 8-year-old twins, and right, so this is going to be challenging. But you know what I have noticed to be more successful in parenting is not yelling or screaming, because that's cutting off communication. But I actually like kneel down so I can look them eye to eye and have a conversation with them, right? Like treat them like people, because they are people, right? They have feelings and stuff like that, and say, hey, this is why we need to do X, Y, and Z. So I think having the patience, I think meekness is a perfect example of your traditional father, leave it to beaver, you know what I mean, type
Just
of archetype. Yeah, like that to me is somebody who is demonstrating meekness. But you still know that if beaver gets out of line, you know what I mean? Like there's gonna be something that's gonna happen. You know, I mean, it's not he's gonna get in trouble, but he's not getting screamed at. You know what I mean? Like I'm disappointed in you. You know, you made the wrong choice, and this is why, and I'm going to teach you a life lesson based on that.
You know, leadership in family. If we use the Preyas example of the strong horse willingly being bridled in leadership, you know, oftentimes it's tough. It's tough to, you talked about ego. It's tough to swallow your pride, right? And you know, it's like even that term in and of itself, it's like there's a servant submission when you know what, I can just really wield some angst and influence here. But again, it goes back to the long game. Like, what's the long game with my family? What's the long game with my kids? What's the long game with my spouse? What's the long game with my parents and my brothers and sisters or my close friends? What's the long game with them? You know, am I going to model what it means to serve in strength? That's what Jesus is saying. Mm-hmm. And I know, you know, we face all kinds of challenges when it comes to family and doing that. That's a in business, yes, it's challenging. Family's a whole nother animal, right? I mean,
They don't have to listen.
no, they don't have to listen. You can't serve someone termination papers at home and be like, well, I mean, in some ways, right? But it's if it's not you can't. I mean, if you can't tell your kids, hey, it's not a fit. We really enjoyed you working with us here for the time you had us, but you're going for adoption.
Right. We're going to take you back.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that's how back to the centering, the centering of how we approach this journey is a lot of what you guys have been talking about. Start with the pause, man. Just start with the pause. And sometimes the pause is a moment. Sometimes it's a day. Sometimes it's a week. Mm-hmm. And lay it out. Lay it out. Hey, it's a big decision. I don't want to approach this in a way that causes harm. I want my power, the power I have in this situation, to be used wisely. And I need some time so that I can make sure that it's under God's control.
Yeah, the pause is the difference between a disagreement and an argument.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
or worse.
Yeah.
Or worse.
Yeah.
But sometimes if my wife says something to me and I disagree with it, that pause, that second, when you don't have that knee-jerk reaction, then the other person feels like, oh, well, they're taking time with me and they want to discuss, whatever this is. Mm-hmm. That's a huge help for, anyone who's married or anyone who has kids or just anyone in your family. I mean, it's the same thing with a brother or sister. You're more likely to rumble with them a little bit, I think, growing up together. But as you become adults and you disagree with, how should we do this? How should we do that? You take that pause, and that separates the disagreement from, an argument that can go on and on and on. So.
I think it stops the emotional, right? Like if I'm getting into an argument, we're arguing, it's going to start out at level 1. It's going to go to level 2 of emotions, right? Level 3, level 4. It's going to keep ratcheting up. You know what I mean? And every time I respond to you, you're going to respond back. And I think that pause stops that, right? It stops at whatever level you're at and maybe brings it down a minute, because then, like you said, the other person, maybe they think you're actually listening to them, right? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. But just the pause in itself stops the emotional ratcheting up and allows you to at least find a homeostasis point to have a discussion. The pause is key.
It is. It's pivotal. It's pivotal. And as you're both talking about it, I think about all those moments where a pause would have been the right move.
Yeah. Hindsight.
I'm talking 10, 20 plus years ago, kind of like, oh, man.
How many physical altercations would have been stopped if you would have just paused?
Oh, Lord.
Right.
And Jesus is bringing us back to that.
Mm-hmm.
He's through these beatitudes, through these lessons on what it truly means to walk in a life joy that is so sound, so stable, so strong that others are irresistibly drawn to you to say, man, there's something different about you. All of these issues and challenges you're facing, you're not fazed in the same way that the rest of us are. Why? Because Jesus' teachings are guiding me to a whole nother transformative way to envision how life can work and work fulfilled, work with God's presence flowing in and through us. I want some of that.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch on what Travis said, like how many altercations could have been saved with just a pause. When I was younger, I got in fights a lot, right?
I remember.
So it felt like at the time that, you're almost building a resume.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I'm older, I tell people I knocked out 30 grown men. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what's weird is when people see you, they don't see the fights on you. Like, they don't see the brawls that you've been in. They don't see, but they do notice, like, what kind of person you are. Like, are you meek? You know, they'll notice that. Are you poor in spirit? They'll get a feeling of that, and it becomes this complete change in how, you know, your emotional immaturity leaves you. You know, when you're young, and then you come into adulthood and you're more emotionally sound. That these are the things that people see on you. These are the things people will relate to. No one relates to, like, where I grew up and how I grew up and getting in fights. Very few people I ever talk to relate to that. But everyone relates to treating them kind, right? Being humble when you can be humble, and recognizing all the times that you failed at it are, I think, a key part of this, because you can be something else by making different decisions as you learn more and more, right? And I always go back to the Be Holy journey. Like, I know I've made a lot of better decisions since starting that. Not that I made them all right. I mean, it hasn't been 100% like great decision making, but thinking about these Beatitudes when I'm in a situation, it does transform, like, your life and who you are. Like, there is a transformation there, and I feel it in myself. I see it in myself. And this one really just touches base with me, the being meek, because I have been an overtly aggressive person my entire life, right? And then we get into this, and you're like, hey, you know, let's bridle that power. Let's yell. Yeah, I read something the other day. It said, never let a loyal employee get to, I don't care anymore. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And applying this, like, to your employees, you know, that's a huge way of not letting that happen, because that happens a lot. I mean, that happens a lot in companies. People don't recognize who really is doing what, and the loyal, passionate person seems like they're complaining all the time, you know, and then they're dismissed. But if you took the time, if you took the pause, and you really listened, and you got an understanding of this, and this is the way you approached your employees, I don't think you would lose any of them due to management, quote unquote.
No, because you move from an unpredictable anger where people walk in fear because they're not sure what your response is going to be, because you constantly do act in a way that is not power under control, to someone who is respected because of your ability to handle situations, as you had said earlier, Travis, in an emotionally intelligent way that not only guides everyone to a better future state, a better outcome, also helps them to rise in how they handle their challenges.
People crave consistency. They want to know, you know what I mean? Not knowing how somebody's going to react to a situation, or not knowing if you have a job, right? Like that's an uneasy feeling. Nobody wants to be in that high. I mean, that just ratchets up the pressure and the anxiety. You know, if you're a calming force and you're predictable in how you react, people want to work for you because you're providing consistency and safety. And at the end of the day, safety is the main thing as human beings that we have to have first, right? Like is you've got to have safety. So provide it for your employees. They'll be long-term assets to your organization.
Yeah. Well, this has been really exciting, and I know someone listening has been blessed by it. It's equally challenging as we move into number 4, the next time we meet. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. We're going to be talking a lot about what it means to do what's right in the sight of God. I'm so excited about that, because I know we'll be further inspired challenged, encouraged. Always good to have you guys.
Good to be here.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for supporting this program. I'd like to pray for you for just a moment that God realigns the heart away from pressure, pride, performance, back to his presence. Let us grow in God's wisdom. Let us give from our overflow, and let us go love radically in every place God sends us. Make us holy, Lord. Set us apart, not just successful, but surrendered. In Jesus' name, amen.